Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Transform with Travel podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Tolliday, the co-founder of R&R. We offer wellness travel and retreats around the world. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Wherever you're listening from, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen, be inspired, and empowered to take the next step towards the adventure of a lifetime. I am super excited to welcome today's guest, Erica Hartnick of Yoga Trade. Over 9 years ago or so, I was a young backpacker and a yogi fanatic looking for creative ways to travel the world and share my love of yoga and wellness. And I stumbled across Yoga Trade and instantly became a member, where they offer endless work trade opportunities around the world. I've been following the brand and their mission for almost a decade, and I can't believe I'm sitting here today with Erica, who is the founder of Yoga Trade, a connection catalyst and mindful adventurer. Erica grew up in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California and is grateful to live a life of exploration. Based out of Lake Tahoe and Costa Rica, she enjoys all things wild and free and facilitates nature-inspired yoga and mindful experiences. Her extensive yoga, travel, and outdoor experience led to the natural collaboration of Yoga Trade in 2012, and she is devoted to sharing her love of regenerative living, yoga, and connecting the global wellness community with infinite opportunities. Today's episode is going to dive deep into Erica's journey as a yogi, traveler, and business owner, as well as the ins and outs of work trade opportunities and sharing wellness around the world, and just so much more. So, thank you so much for joining today, Erica.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on here. It's an honor, and I'm looking forward to diving in and having fun. So, yeah, thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
Okay. So we were talking backstage a bit about how looking at your journey and how Yoga Trade started and like all the places that you've been, we've kind of been like orbiting each other for the past decade between Costa Rica and Canggu and Bali and all these things. So it's awesome that we're having this conversation. And I'd love to start off with your yoga journey. What about the practice of yoga really led you to pursue a career in the industry full time, whether it was as a teacher or leading experiences or now running this business, Yoga Trade? What really about the practice drew you in?
So, I was devoted to yoga. I had gotten really into yoga. I kind of came from more of like a mountain athlete background, like the decade prior, I guess, and got more into yoga because of injuries and such. And then just started to learn more about it, did yoga teacher trainings, and started my own journey with yoga. And I was really, really devoted to yoga, but I wasn't really looking to start a yoga business. I wasn't trying to devote my career to yoga either. I was just on this pretty like devoted path of yoga. And I felt at the time I was just so grateful and just really wanted to give back and serve. And that's actually how Yoga Trade was birthed, was kind of this like really true, authentic sense of wanting to give back to the world. And we started it as a passion project. So there was no business plan, and I had like no intention to really devote my career life to yoga. I just knew I was devoted to the path of yoga, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It just kind of naturally evolves that way because you want to share and then you realize that other people want to share as well. So that's awesome. And so you mentioned on the website, on Yoga Trade website, that you've had a life of traveling and working seasonal jobs and teaching yoga around the world. For many people, this would seem like, the absolute dream, like spend one season here and then another season there. And I'm sure it does feel like that at some stage. I would love to know, what did you learn the most about yourself as you were or still are working seasonally and living, in different places around the world at different points in the year?
Yeah, so much, so much. And it has changed so much through the phase of life. So I think like right out of college, I actually kind of just tried to enter into, because I actually did get a degree in business, and then just kind of tried to tap into that right out of college at a young, ripe age of 22. But then I quickly diverted into the seasonal lifestyle more through skiing and snowboarding. And that's was my main passion at that age. And so I kind of just threw myself into this seasonal mountain lifestyle that many people do know that love skiing and snowboarding. I
Yeah.
don't know if you were ever into that or are into that. And so for several years, I just was kind of like the classic ski bum and, lived for an endless winter and worked any job I could for skiing and snowboarding. And then that ended up kind of putting me in this pattern of like, I would have a winter job and then I would have a different summer job. And then I would maybe try to find odd jobs in the spring or the fall where I would start to travel because it was almost more affordable to travel than to stay living in the mountain town without a job.
Mm,
And I just kind of got that was like my world for several years. And then it just became that was like my normal way of life. And, my friends were all doing it and I was doing it. And I kind of really started to like it because you could have like a seasonal job, work really hard for like 3 or 4 months, and then have closure, and then like have like a little bit of like a mini time off and then come back. And I think like one of the things that I learned the most pretty quickly was that it kind of just leads to burnout. It doesn't really lead to like a long-term purposeful life so much because I was traveling so much and just doing all these different like seasonal jobs, and I was learning so much and having so many experiences, but there was no like long-term vision, I guess. But I saw a lot of freedom in it. And I think I read that somewhere that your one of your main values is freedom. I feel like that's one of mine
yes.
as well. And I just really like loved the freedom in it too, of just being able to live this nomadic lifestyle and know that I could get a job anywhere if I look seasonally, like, oh, I can always get a job somewhere, a seasonal job.
Hmm.
So it also kind of gave me a bit of relief. I don't know, and I'm still learning because I am actually still in this seasonal lifestyle, which is so interesting because for the past 10 years, I have lived May until November in Lake Tahoe, and it's like kind of like the summer season. And then I've lived in December until May in Costa Rica, which is kind of like the high season in Costa Rica. And I do seasonal work still to this day, among other, I also run yoga trades, which is a remote job. But I'd say, yeah, still it's interesting because I am in my mid 40s and I have these two communities, which I do love, but I still am like kind of longing for just like a one spot that's like truly home. And I'm so grateful for traveling and all of my seasonal work experiences. But I think what I've learned the most, just like as myself at this current age, is that I think it is nice to pick one spot to really dive in and nourish those relationships and that community because I've have so much experience in tourism, and so really I'm working a lot for tourists, not really for the community. So that's one thing that's just come up a lot especially the last 5 years is if I could do it all over, I might try to focus a little bit more on the stable local community offerings more than trying to work for the tourists.
Because the tourists are fleeting and you can't control like how many are coming at any given time, or if there's a pandemic that hits, like what do you do? And so having that community aspect. And I do think that does come with age. I know I live in Fort Lauderdale, so we're the yachting capital of the world. So there's a lot of yacht crew that come in and out. And I have a lot of friends who are captains, and it's that novelty and excitement. And there's like the high highs, and then there can be the low lows. And I think there's beauty in both sides of it. You mentioned this longing for like a meaningful, long lasting purpose. And I do think that's something that a lot of my friends in the seasonal work industry, whether it's ski season or they're working in yachting or whatever it is, that it's this kind of like a never ending ramble. Like it's just this like, game that you're playing, which is can be really fun and really fulfilling, especially if you love freedom and travel and all of that so much. But it's also this deeper sense of a purpose. And so I think it's interesting that you do have this other amazing organization that you've created and built and sustained over the last, decade to be able to kind of like latch on to this deeper purpose as well. With the seasonal work, can you explain a little bit about if someone was interested and like, wow. So it's kind of like, we live in South Florida, so there's a lot of snowbirds. They live half the year in Canada and they come down half the year in Florida, but they're mostly retirees. But for a lot of people, like I said, it does sound like really, really exciting to have that kind of lifestyle. So do you have any pieces of advice of how someone could potentially kind of break into seasonal work? Like what would be your go-to advice for someone who's just starting out? Like, how do I even get a job? How do I even pick a location?
Yeah, it is really exciting. So I would say the first thing would be to just like know what you want, really follow that first answer. Like, where do you want to go? Like, what makes you come alive? What sparks your imagination? Like, what do you want to learn? Where do you want to go? And then, maybe do some research about the seasons, because most places do have high seasons. And so, like, kind of learn about that. And then it's, starting where you're at, like, honestly assessing where you are at right now in your life and see if you can put the pieces together to allow yourself to travel. I think that's super important. You're going to have to set yourself up so that you can leave. I mean, sometimes it's okay. You want to maybe just a complete start over, but like, you want to see what your housing is, like if you have kids, if you have pets, like finances are, if you're able to like leave a job and then come back to it. It is really possible, but you have to like shed a lot of things to be able to do this. I think because I started so young and just kept going, I don't have kids. I have never bought a house. I don't really have very many things, like material things. I have like a really simple life, and that makes it really easy for me to stay nimble. But yeah, a lot of people do come up to me, and maybe they have families and like 3 dogs and they have a mortgage and they have a full-time job and then they want to break into it. I don't really have experience with actually living that kind of lifestyle. So I don't even know what to tell those people, but I would just say, well, you kind of have to downsize and simplify or set some boundaries and say, hey, I'm taking 3 months off and going to have an experience.
I don't know about you, but something I've always grappled with as a traveler is how to dress comfortably for travel, but also look stylish, preferably without checking a bag. As I've grown older, I want my travel outfits to match my lifestyle. And even though I may have matured from my backpacking days, comfort is still a priority for me, especially on long travel days. I was stoked to be introduced to the brand Anatomy, who specialize in functional luxury travel clothing. I fell in love with their passion for sustainability, high quality fabrics, and how fashion can transform and elevate your adventures. It actually simplifies your life and takes the stress out of packing and dressing. I recently took an 8-hour flight to Portugal in one of their shirts and pants and was super comfortable, stylish, and wrinkle free the whole way through. My favorite thing about Anatomy is that they hand select fabrics that are wrinkle resistant, easy to maintain, and do not take up too much luggage space. I can pack an entire weekend's worth of Anatomy outfits in one of their signature packing cubes, eliminating my need to check a bag, which we all know is a huge flex as a traveler. You can hand wash and hang dry, so the clothing doesn't need dry cleaning or ironing services, saving time and money on the road. My favorite Anatomy item is their Suzette Skirt, the cutest form-fitting athletic skirt with shorts underneath and pockets. What's not to love? Head over to anatomy.com, that's ANATOMIE.com, and use the code RISING20 for 20% off your next order. Transform your travel style to the next level with Anatomy. Absolutely. And I think that simple life, that simplifying, people are really feeling called to. There's so many people that I talk to that are just like, I just want to slow down. I just want to sell my house and my overhead and simplify and downsize. So I do think that does speak to a lot. And there's actually a significantly growing number of families and people in their 40s and 50s with a lot of baggage, I guess you could say. They've got kids, they've got dogs, they've got mortgages, and they want to go take that 3-month break or 6-month break. There's a woman, Annika Paradise, she's on the podcast on episode 38. And she, along with her two co-writers, wrote a book called The Wonder Year that's helping families and adults do take that break at a later stage. And they break down step by step how to downsize your house, how to choose those types of experiences. So it is out there. And I think that's really cool that you're able to offer that experience for people. And so with this concept that you're talking about around, having that connection to community and also having that long lasting purpose, but also I'm assuming as a seasonal worker, it could be difficult to maintain long lasting friendships that are rooted in community. And that's why I think Yoga Trade is so cool, because you're giving a community to people who want this lifestyle and perhaps they don't know what's possible for them, and they have the support and the resources and the opportunities to lean on and rely on when they're not sure who else to go to. So I think that's amazing. And so for those listening who don't know what Yoga Trade is, I'd love for you to share the story behind creating this revolutionary platform for yoga and wellness professionals around the world. Like, what is Yoga Trade and why did you start it?
Yeah, well, thank you. Wow. I feel like that's
It
revolutionary. Uh,
is. Especially back when you created it. Like there wasn't much out there like it.
Yeah, and so that is. So the yoga industry and the internet, the online industry, I feel like in the wellness industry, it was 2012 when we first kind of started it. It's not even that long ago, but things were a lot different. I mentioned earlier on this path of back then I was traveling, so I was living in Tahoe still, working seasonally, and then I was taking time off in the winter and I was traveling and I was teaching yoga along the way to fund my travels and also just to travel with purpose. And so, yeah, I was teaching, Costa Rica and Fiji, Indonesia, Morocco, and kind of like as a backpacker traveler. My business partner and I, we both had some experience in woofing, which is
Hmm.
will work on organic farms. I don't know that they've been around for a really long time.
Yeah.
And we kind of got the idea, or I got the idea from that, like, oh, instead of going to work on a kiwi farm in New Zealand, maybe I could like go and teach yoga in New Zealand for a month and get room and board. And so I just started to seek out these opportunities on my own. And also, I was really wanted to get better at surfing at that point in my life. And so I was seeking out specific surf destinations that were really exciting to me and like really like I was dreaming of like all these like awesome surf spots so that I could continue to learn and practice surfing and then also teach yoga. And yeah, I was kind of just on this journey for a few years and I was like living my best life. Like, yeah, loving,
Sounds like a dream.
yeah, I was on, like, a major high for those few years. Everyone was asking, like, "How are you doing this? Like, how are you living this life?" And I was feeling just so grateful, this outpouring. And, yeah, I was actually on a flight to Bali, and I just kinda had almost, like, struck by lightning or something. I was, like, kinda, like, asleep and thought, like, "Oh, man, I should start something to give back to teach people how to live this lifestyle, maybe kind of like a yoga travel jobs network." And I just started writing my journal, making little doodles, drawing. And while in Bali, I had met up with my friends, Pat and Christy, who they're married now, and they managed the yoga farm in Costa Rica, another place I had been. And I told them about it at Canggu at
Yep.
the Internet Cafe. We were drinking dragon fruit smoothies and it just was kind of like fireworks were going off. We were just all so excited about it and like, yes, we're doing it. Like, let's create this. And yeah, like I said, it was a passion project. It wasn't really thought of as a business. Like, I often try to think, and I don't even always remember all the pieces, but I believe we just started by creating a Facebook page. It was going to be a network for people to connect with yoga, teaching travel jobs, and volunteer work exchange, wellness, travel opportunities. And we just kind of wanted to create almost like an online bulletin board. And so I think we started with a Facebook page. And then I think by 2013, we launched the first website, but it was super simple. It was maybe a little bit more than Craigslist, but like
Yeah.
that was kind of our vision, like a Craigslist, like just like a
Right.
bulletin board. And yeah, really the intention is to just connect people that want to live this lifestyle, this yoga, wellness, travel, work exchange lifestyle, and just to connect people with opportunities and encourage this creative, purposeful travel. And yeah, and then we kind of just started to learn along the way. After doing it for maybe a year or two, the organic growth was crazy. It was just like started to like catch momentum. And so that is when we decided to change it to a business. And yeah, we just started charging annual membership dues, and that was it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so today really kind of stands the same. Our root intention is to connect yoga teachers with travel opportunities, jobs, unique travel trade, gigs. And yeah, that's kind of the core of it. And it's still kind of just, it has evolved over the years. So,
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think like cuz I remember back in 2015 when my husband and I set off for a year and we were supposed to teach English for a year and that only lasted for a couple months and immediately I jumped onto yoga trade like how could we make this work? But at the time my husband has like no qualifications in like anything wellness or anything. So it didn't work out at the time. But I just think it's really cool that you mentioned the idea struck you by like almost like it struck you by lightning and you just started journaling and doodling because I have a very similar experience traveling. just having this journal that was dedicated to business ideas. And it wasn't like I sat there and was like, okay, brain, like come up with something good. It was like it would literally come to me in the middle of the night and I couldn't stop. And I think that's what travel and space and being in nature does to you. It opens you up to all of these amazing pings that the universe is trying to send to you, but we're so bogged down in day to day, or we're so just have this kind of like gray cloud over us because what we're eating and the pollution and everything like that, that I think when you do travel in an intentional way, the way in which you were, it just opens you up. Like I have goosebumps. Like it just opens you up to this idea, and it gave you the clarity that it was almost like a train you couldn't get off. That's the way it felt like you were describing it. Like this train, you're like, hop on, or you're not going to make it. I really love that. And for those listening that are like, whoa, I'm not a yoga teacher. Like, what is there anything else for me? Like, I'm literally on your website now, and it's, retreat manager for a family run and surf retreat in Morocco, a paid cook job at an Ayurveda yoga hotel, a content creator role for a retreat in Morocco. So it's not just for yoga teachers, it's with people for a wide variety of skills with a wellness/yoga overlay in really, really cool places.
G'day, mates from the land down under. Just kidding. I'm right here in South Florida, enjoying a true blue Aussie coffee, pastry, and meat pie at my absolute favorite cafe here in South Florida, Bite and Coffee. That's BYTE and Coffee, located in Lighthouse Point. Bite and Coffee is owned and managed by the absolute best couple from down under, Dan and Kat, who moved to South Florida from Melbourne, Australia, with the dream of bringing the incredible Aussie cafe culture to the States. As someone who's lived in Australia for 5 years, I surely do miss my Aussie flat white coffee, brekkie buns, and sausage rolls. But what I miss more is the sense of community when you step inside your favorite cafe. You know that feeling when you walk in and they already know your order and it's ready to go? Yeah, that kind of feeling. Bite and Coffee brings the good vibes, delicious food and coffee, and the true sense of family. I can bring my little girls for breakfast and know that they are welcomed. If you're living in South Florida or just visiting and passing by, I highly recommend heading over to Bite and Coffee and grabbing a coffee with your breakfast or lunch, or even checking out their incredible wine and beer selection with a delicious charcuterie board at night. It's the perfect spot for a catch-up with a friend or a business meeting. As a special gift to listeners, when you order at Bite, be sure to mention Transform with Travel for 10% off your order. So go ahead and check it out. Bite and Coffee, located in Lighthouse Point.
How do you like vet these opportunities? Like, how do you make sure that, okay, this Ayurvedic hotel in Rishikesh is somewhere that you would want to be sending people there?
Yeah, so we do a light vetting, I would say, when an organization or a business or a person posts a job or opportunity to be listed. It does not go live until our team reviews it. So we do a light vetting, I would say. So it's not like we're digging deep doing research. We don't like call every person, but we make sure that it is a real place and real person, real place, and make sure that it looks like a good opportunity, because we can't possibly be responsible for every single thing that's going
No.
on around the globe. But we do a light vetting, and then we encourage folks to, during the application practice or process, to really do their own research and use their intuition. And
Absolutely. It's kind of like indeed.com here in the US. Like in order to list a job listing, you go through like a little bit of a vetting. Like you have to have a phone number, you have to be a real employer, but then it's up to you as the interviewee, as the potential employee, to get that gut check or to have that conversation with them before. And so yeah, like you said, if it was your job to make sure that everything was exact, then it'd be like its own retreat every single time. So with that, what if someone was, okay, I found this amazing job listing on yogatrade.com. What should a teacher or this potential work trade opportunity, what should they look for to ensure that it's a professional and safe experience? What are some of your like green flags or red flags that you would be looking for?
well, the first thing is the contact host and the communication. So I definitely would try to have calls or even FaceTime calls with them, so that you can really just feel it out and see if it's a good fit and feels good. And I would ask a lot of questions and make sure there's clear expectations. what are my responsibilities going to be? Like how many hours? Like what's the compensation? What are my, a lot of these, every opportunity is completely different. So you can't put them all in a box. But for example, like a lot of the yoga trades I have done, not a lot of them have paid a lot of money, if any, but a lot of them have been super rich in experience. And most of the ones that I've done do have like offer a private room and delicious meals a day. Possibly I can use like the surfboards. I can charge for private yoga classes if I want. So I just want to like ask questions like, okay, when am I going to be expected to be showing up? What are my responsibilities? What are my accommodations? What's the food? What's the culture like there? Do I need to like wear certain things? Like, what's the time commitment? Because some of these experiences, I think a month is like a sweet spot, but they're all different. Like some people are looking for 3 or 6 months or a year, depending on the job or opportunity. Or sometimes people just want someone to come for a week for their retreat to help out. Or so, yeah, I think just communicating really with the host is the main thing. And also following your intuition. If you have any gut feeling, then you should listen to that. And then I think, especially for these ones that were traveling far, right? If I'm going to be taking a job up in Morocco to teach yoga for a month, it's taking personal responsibility to also have a little bit of a backup plan. If I've never been to Morocco before, I'm going to this like retreat center to teach yoga for a month. So step one would be talking to the host and making sure that, everything feels aligned. But step two, I feel like I definitely want to have a little bit of a backup plan in my back pocket as a traveler, maybe just doing a little bit of research. And also, if, having a little bit of extra funds, maybe in case something, hopefully it wouldn't turn that way. But I do think part of yoga trade and traveling international is taking a little bit of personal responsibility for being an international traveler. And yeah, there's always ups and downs with that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I appreciate that because I remember we were teaching English in Thailand, and about a couple months in, we realized this might not be the exact experience that we would like. But at the same time, I was freelancing social media marketing in the background, and we had a certain number of funds, so it wasn't scary to say we're not going to take this job anymore because we did have something in our back pocket to kind of rely on. So I appreciate that. And I think that's just advice for travelers as a whole, whether it's for a work trade experience, like always have a plan B, always have some sort of safety net like behind you because you never know like what could happen. So yeah, I think that's really cool. What would you say is some of your like favorite work trade experiences that you've had in your career as a work trade yogi? What would you say is some of your favorite?
Man, well, Costa Rica definitely stole my heart and still has it. Yeah, I think the yoga farm in Costa Rica, which is my business partner, Pat, him and his wife managed that for well over a decade.
Wow.
That was just such a sweet one because it was permaculture based. So it was permaculture, experimental wellness and yoga center. Also, like a lot of the people there like to surf. And it was just like such a great setup. I feel like it's a really good example for what is a good yoga trade. And they're very clear with their expectations. And as a yoga teacher, you come to the yoga, or this is when things are shifting probably, but when I did the yoga trades at the yoga farm, it was for 1 month. So it was a 1 month commitment. And the commitment was to teach one yoga class a day, 6 days a week. Then like a little bit of, if you wanted to, you could help out a little bit in the garden or a little bit in the kitchen, but you didn't really have to. And then it was in exchange for a private room and all your meals.
Wow.
And it was in such like a cool community, and you could really kind of grow with the month with everyone else. So I just like loved that because I felt like at that time too, it really helped empower me as a yoga teacher and build confidence and just meet connections. And then just the nature too. The nature is unreal, which I know you love nature and your retreats. Really, really awesome. Another place that I really love is Nagalankala, which is in Sumba. And
I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little hidden place, but it's also kind of the same. I think I really resonate with the permaculture, yoga, surf kind of combination. For me, that's really what I wanted to be around. So those were probably like the two standouts that off the bat that I could think of.
Yeah, I think so. It's really interesting when we talk about these work trade because I get asked all the time from people, I want to go away, but I can't afford it. Or I can go away for 2 weeks, but I'd really like to go for 2 months. And I always tell them, like, there are so many creative ways to cover a lot of your expenses if you're willing to just teach one class a day. Like, that is an hour to an hour and a half of your time. Sometimes it's helping a, hostel with 3 hours of social media management, if that's your skill, or being a photographer, or like there's so many skills that people need. And if you're able to trade a little bit of your time, you're able to recoup so much of what is actually expensive when we travel. And what's really cool about what I love so much about yoga trade and work trade opportunities is that you get rooted in the community. It's so easy as a traveler to bounce 2 days here, 3 days there, 4 days there. But one, like you said, you can burn out quickly. And two, you don't really get to know what that culture is truly like, or those people, or build those long lasting connections, and what's kept you coming back year after year after year to Costa Rica. And so I think it's just such a different way of travel. It's a slower way of travel while also still reaping so much of the benefits. So I am a huge proponent of yoga trade. I love it so much. I've sent the website to so many people that ask me, like, how do I travel? I'm like, here you go. So I love it. And you mentioned nature a lot throughout this conversation. I know you grew up in the like Tahoe area. Was that right? Around Tahoe? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you grew up, in the mountain area. You love to ski and snowboard. You love surfing. What about nature in itself really draws you to that? Like, what do you find you receive from nature as a traveler, or just even as a person?
Yeah, I think kind of what you were talking about as travel creates just the space for the channels to be open.
Mm,
And I think because I grew up that way, it's like almost an essential need. I need it to live almost, because it's almost like as essential for me as like food and water and shelter. And then like nature would probably be in there too. Yeah, I think it just helps clear the mind, open the heart, connect with the source. And really, it's like, I feel like that's what life's all about, and giving back to nature too, So it's not really so much like what it's giving me. It's like, how am I taking care of nature? Always thinking about that. Yeah, I think, and the solitude is really important for me. Solitude in nature, it really just helps clear the brain, like reset the nervous system,
yeah.
feel really connected to everything, that we really are all connected. It's kind of the same as travel, really, how travel can put you in these places and shift your perspectives and make you really feel like, oh, the world is a really kind place. And there's like, it's not scary travel. I mean, I guess I feel like when I travel, my number one biggest realization is that there's so much kindness and love in the
Hmm.
world.
Yeah.
And kind of what I feel like when I'm just in nature too. So,
Yeah, no, I was literally just interviewed yesterday for a podcast, and she asked me, like, what are the top three things you've learned while traveling? And I was like, number one is people are inherently good. And again, if you continually set yourself into that mindset, it's easier to see. And I do think when people are more exposed to nature, as you said, like your nervous system resets and you're seeing things more clearly. So you're responding to your environment and people within your environment more clearly, and they're responding back to you with more kindness and all that. I know Michael Easter, he's an author. He wrote in The Comfort Crisis that there's this concept called the 3-day effect. And there's these researchers across the UK, across Denmark, across all these countries that talk about when you're able to fully immerse yourself in nature for 3 full days, by that third day, your biological markers for stress go down. So your heart rate, your blood pressure, your breath rate, all these things are like scientifically tracked at the day 3 mark without fail. Everything starts to lower down and you're able to take that deep breath. So I do think that's why we as a business R&R, majority of our retreats are very much well steeped in nature, and it's a very much like one-to-one connection with being out on the land. So I appreciate that. And you mentioned that you love, part of this relationship with nature is not just what do I receive, it's how do I give back. And in your bio, in your little headline, you say that you're a mindful adventurer. So I would love to hear, like, what makes a mindful adventurer? What does that mean to you? And how can others apply that to their travels?
yeah, well, it's being out in nature or traveling mindfully, I guess. And because I have lived in some really heavily tourism places in my life, especially like Tahoe and Costa Rica, you can kind of just see a little bit of a difference of who's coming in hot renting the motorboats and jet skis and just drinking, partying, throwing their Coors Light bottles. Or in Costa Rica, people just rattling their quads, like same thing, like throwing trash. Yeah, it's just kind of like walking a little bit lightly. Like there's in the mountains in Tahoe, there's all, like the leave no trace.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people talk about positive impact, but I almost like to kind of like, no, we're not really trying to make an impact. I think we're trying to like really leave no trace. I kind of like that concept a little, like philosophically a little bit more. So how can we just step gently, wander gently, and we're just trying to be non-judgmental witnesses and give back where we can, but not necessarily like we're trying to. I think there's a lot of people in the travel, they want to like go and like help and change and make things better. But a lot of times people, maybe they don't want that, or maybe they don't really even think, they maybe don't even really need that. It's just like an outsider perspective. So I think it's just kind of treading lightly, just bringing a greater awareness. I think once you're more connected to nature, the more you live in nature, the more you practice mindfulness or yoga, then it kind of just is like a natural evolution of how you travel.
Absolutely. It's 100% that awareness piece and that evolution piece, and the non-judgment piece is really important. I remember we were on a beach in Thailand, I think it was, and there was tons of plastic. Actually, no, it was in Sri Lanka. There was we were actually like literally surfing, and there was plastic like as I was paddling, like plastic bag, and then this trash, and like it's in the water. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, I can't believe it's, this is disgusting. How do they not know? And someone was like, no, 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 this is actually coming from, maybe I can't remember what country, coming from Thailand, and the current literally brought stuff. Like it's nothing that they can actually do, nor do they have the resources, or like they're just getting by day. So trying to like teach them about XYZ is not what they need. What you can do is not travel with mini plastic bottles of shampoo. Like, how are you making your own personal change without trying to place judgment on these people that it might not even be their faults in the first place. So yeah, I really do appreciate that mindset. Instead of like, what positive impact can I make? It's like, actually, how can I negate my impact as a whole? And like literally as if I wasn't here. And what I really appreciate about the longer trades, like the month or 2-month trades, is it does kind of negate all that plane hopping and travel that exposes to the environment as well. So that's another way of adding your practice, your spiritual practice of whatever it is, yoga or whatever your practice is, adding that element of mindful travel to your adventures. So I think that's really awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with before we close up?
If you can dream it, you can do it. So I think that's like one of my favorite quotes. And I really believe that if you can see it in your mind's eye and you can write about it and you can honestly like see yourself doing that, then it can happen. So follow your dreams, follow your heart. And yeah, so at Yoga Trade, we started this year, the last Friday of every month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We're doing a Yoga Trade Council gathering.
Oh,
It's a
fun.
free online for about an hour. It's mostly, it can be for anyone, but it's kind of specifically geared toward yoga teachers who want to teach and travel. And so we kind of talk about important topics like mindful travel as a yoga teacher. And that's the last Friday of every month.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then we usually do at least one retreat every year, Yoga Trade, usually in Costa Rica. So check out that. And yeah, if anybody has any questions or in the future, or if there's any other questions that you want to ask, I'm happy to answer them.
Amazing. Well, I'll make sure to link all that to the show notes, and I will make sure you got time at the end to share all of your links and your handles for social. But before we close, I always wrap up these interviews with a rapid fire question. So I have 3 questions to see what comes up for you. So are you ready? Number 1 is, what country or place has made the biggest impact on you?
Costa Rica.
Yeah, I felt like I think I know the answer to this. Number 2 is, what's your go-to travel accessory or must-have?
Sarong.
Oh, I like that one. That's like so versatile. I love that. A sarong. That's one of my favorites too. Okay, and the last one is, what's the biggest life lesson that you've learned while traveling?
Impermanence, that everything's changing all the time. Nothing lasts forever.
Oh, I love that. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Do you have like an Instagram or a LinkedIn, or what how would you want people to connect with you if they wanted to? If they're like, hey, Erica sounds amazing, I want to connect with her online.
Yeah, well, my personal Instagram is Tahoe Outdoor Yoga. Then there's also the Yoga Trade Instagram, and then the Yoga Trade website.com. It's probably the easiest.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. I can't wait for our listeners to hear your story and learn more about Yoga Trade. And we will definitely catch up either in South Florida or Costa Rica, somewhere around the world. We will have a coffee.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great to get to know you a little bit and keep up your really great and important work that you do. And hope to see you down the path. And yeah, lots of love to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Transform with Travel podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode of inspiration, adventure, and exploration. If you felt inspired by this episode, please rate and review in whatever streaming app you're listening from. This allows us to spread the word even more and continue to serve up weekly doses of adventure. As always, we'd love if you could share the episode with someone in your life who you think will benefit from this conversation. Thanks so much for listening. This is your reminder to get out there and keep on exploring.